Hello. Hey. The last day of the Turn Down Stress, Turn On to Intimacy workshop. Yeah, hey. If any of you have not yet been a part of this live, or it's your first time seeing me, there's a link in my there's a link in my bio to sign up for this workshop. You'll get a free replay of all the material that we covered this week, and you'll also get a 20-page workbook that you can download immediately, and it will just help you to be able to follow along with the stuff that we've covered this week. I have uploaded all of the videos onto the database, so when you download or when you sign up for the webinar, when you sign up for the workshop, you'll just immediately get the replays and you'll get the workbook. So I wanted to take this last day to just recap the information that we covered this week and to give you a lot of ideas on how to implement the information into date nights, into activities that you can do with your spouse or partner to help with reconnection. So day one was all about how your subconscious mind is programmed. If you've ever heard of your subconscious mind, if you've never heard of your subconscious mind, it's the part of you that dictates all behavior based on past experiences. So what I mean by that is from ages 0 to 7, you are in what's called theta brainwave state, more so during that time than at any other time in your life. And the reason that you are in that state is so that you can download information from your early attachment figures and early childhood experiences to help you best navigate the complexity of the world as an adult. A lot of times this is when you experience problems as an adult because you have a program that needs to be upgraded. If you are looking for science-based evidence about this, you can look up neuroplasticity in your brain. You can also look up the nervous system. There's a really great books and resources that I have in the workbook as well. But basically, you are programmed from a really young age on how to relate in relationships and for times of stress. When you notice that you have some similar patterns, or maybe if you haven't noticed before, I hope that this will just spark some initiation of reflecting back on how your parents showed each other love, how they showed you love, and how they tended to your needs during times of stress, how they tended to their own needs during times of stress. This is an opportunity for you to just self-reflect on the problems that you're experiencing as an adult and how they might be influenced by those early childhood experiences. Day 2, we talked all about how the nervous system is programmed. You have your fight or flight response, which is your sympathetic nervous system, and you have your rest and digest response, which is called your parasympathetic nervous system. Those two systems are like the gas and the brake of how to respond to your environment. Thanks, Chels. It's like the gas and the brake of how you respond to your environment. So when you do feel activated by some sort of stressor, that system presses the gas and you respond. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. It causes you to take action. And then you have that brake that helps you to say, okay, I'm not in a stressful situation. I'm going to relax. I'm going to come back down to baseline, and I'm going to achieve an optimal state of balance. The problem is because we have so many threats that happen on a day-to-day basis, not just environmental stressors like something really crazy happening like a pandemic or the threat of somebody hurting you outside of your home, but we also have psychological threats that happen so much more often than physical threats. So social media is a huge contributing factor to psychological threats that you experience. The stress of taking care of your home environment, cleaning, cooking, taking care of kids, finances, work, leaving the house and having to worry about your physical safety, those all influence your nervous system. And this is a problem that I see and I feel that is happening globally with everyone being so hyper vigilant or completely shut down. So your nervous system goes through a cycle. I showed you in the second day. There's a photo, or there's a picture in your workbook to help make a little bit more sense. But basically, right now, you might notice that you're not necessarily stressed. Although me reading off the list of psychological stressors could definitely cause that activation of your nervous system. But traditionally, when you're on social media, maybe, or just right now, you are listening and you might notice you have to go to the bathroom. You might notice you're hungry or thirsty. Those are indications that you are in the parasympathetic nervous system state. So that actually allows you to seek connection and intimacy when you're in this state. You're not focused on, am I safe? And then when you start to notice that you are activated by something in the environment, maybe your heart starts to race, you start to breathe a little bit more shallow, you don't have to go to the bathroom anymore, and you're no longer hungry. And the worst part is that you get tunnel vision. So you're now focused on one part of what you're being triggered by, and it's very hard to be resourceful in this state because you're focused on that threat. So your nervous system is responding to the threat that it's perceiving from the environment. So we talked about how that influences your nervous system, and when you have those constant psychological threats, it can cause you to have a dysregulation in your nervous system. So now that gas in the brake is like gas, 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 brake, gas, 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 gas. So when the gas is pushed for the majority of the day, that throws you into dysregulation, and you also have hormones, neurochemicals called adrenaline and cortisol. We all know what adrenaline feels like, that are coursing through your body. And the more that they stay in your body, they linger. Cortisol especially lingers for a longer period of time than adrenaline. It causes a breakdown of your body. So when these chemicals they are prolonged in your body, it's like an animal being in survival mode for the majority of the day, or it's like a car pushing the gas for the majority of the day. How fast would it run out of fuel? Do you think that animal who's like constantly worried about survival, do you think his survival rate actually goes down? Yes, it does, because he's overloading his system, and you probably get to a point of overwhelm, which is what a lot of people experience, especially with anxiety and depression. When you get to that point of like helplessness, hopelessness, overwhelm, where your body shuts down, that's when you enter that state of like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that is your nervous system's functioning. When it becomes so overwhelmed by the amount of stimuli that you are exposed to, it gets to a state of overwhelm, and that's when we see failure to thrive. That's when we see isolation, disconnection. So I am attempting to explain neuroscience in a way that makes sense to your relationships and your ability to connect to people. Day 3 was all about co-regulation. So what I specifically do in the work that I do with private clients is helping to regulate the nervous system for the benefit of your own health and wellness and ability to connect. But also, the more that you are able to regulate your nervous system, the more you positively influence everyone around you. Everyone around you will benefit from your regulated nervous system. You'll start to feel different. You'll start to feel better for people. Animals, like pets, dogs especially, will gravitate to you once you start to know how to regulate, once you start to feel better, once you start to achieve once you start to achieve more balanced states and can get into that homeostasis state. So once you reach that point where the nervous system is hypersaturated and absorbing too much. That's a good question. So when you do get into that I'll show you a picture. So when you do get into that overwhelmed state, it's really important to just understand what's happening in your nervous system so you can start to like give yourself self-talk of what's going on. The biggest part that is not talked about is when you get into that state of overwhelm and you start to like turn off to the world. In order to come back down and complete the healing cycle or the trauma cycle, you have to actually experience the same emotions that you had that put you into overwhelm. So that might be anxiety, that might be rage, that might be sadness. And most people, because they don't know what's happening in the trauma cycle, they will suppress and be put back into the state of overwhelm and shutdown. So it kind of like makes you modulate between allowing the body to process trauma and becoming overwhelmed and suppressing. And I noticed that when people do suppress the way that they feel, they also develop addictive habits, or they're utilizing drugs or alcohol in order to suppress the way that they're feeling. But actually your body is seeking homeostasis by taking you back down into the feelings that you had before you experienced overwhelm. So maybe you were overwhelmed, but you felt more stressed. So you might feel more stressed, but knowing you can watch animal videos so there's a video specifically if you YouTube it. It's like a gazelle being chased by a tiger, and the gazelle freezes and falls over, and the tiger's like, oh, I don't really want you anymore. That is a perfect example of what happens when your body experiences overwhelm. You shut down, you lay on your side, you're like, all right, I don't want to do this anymore. But you notice that the gazelle, when it wants to wake back up, it wants to come back to the living world, it has to shake. It shakes excessively. This is called the thawing response. It's like, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, it's shaking so much to dissipate the energy that put it into the overwhelmed state. So in order to come out of that state, you have to sort of feel your way through that experience. And I know that this is really, really challenging, which is why I love what I do, because I can help guide people through understanding what's happening in your body and make it a not so extreme, scary experience. Well, that cycle of shaking has been... Yeah, so I mean, there are several exercises that you can do. Somatic body work, you can do like martial arts. I personally, when I was going through a traumatic experience, I started doing Krav Maga to help me move the energy of being like feeling rage and then being able to transmute it into something that would allow me to dissipate the energy in a healthy way, just so I had enough distance from that emotion that I could clearly think about what was going on. Right? Because when you're so consumed by an emotion, it's really, really hard to think logically. Your brain is not set up for that. It's set up to think about the immediate threat to your survival, which, because we are human and have a frontal lobe, we continually revisit this state of trauma that we're in until we allow it to run its course and actually move through you. I do a lot of dancing videos. You probably have seen that. That's my way of like moving energy. Moving energy, not necessarily bad energy, just moving energy. I like to wiggle my body. There are a lot of resources and research articles on movement-based therapy, dancing, martial arts, boxing, kickboxing, yoga. Yin yoga in particular is really good for releasing the neuropeptide hold in your body. Trauma gets stored in your tissues. So when you're doing yin yoga, you're actually finding points where you might have that stored energy and allowing it to move in a safe and gentle way. You might not even remember the memory, but there's something stored in your body that's kind of holding on to that pattern. So does the suppression lead to escalation of those feelings? So does the suppression lead to escalation of those feelings? Well, suppression brings you back into a state of not wanting to see those feelings. So you start to modulate. So you maybe like touch those feelings, and then based on your level of preparedness to deal with those feelings, or your system's desire to explore those feelings, will determine if you decide to go through the trauma response, complete the trauma complete the trauma cycle, or stay stuck in that modulation of suppression, dissociation, and actually moving through those feelings. Any more questions? Those are really great. Thanks, Julian. So co-regulation is something that is felt because your nervous system emits into your electromagnetic field an emotion. Your emotional state emits these vibes. This is where that term, like, I like your vibes. When they like your vibes, they like the way that your nervous system feels. Your vibes are your emotional state. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Mark. Your vibes are your emotional state. So they emit outside of you into this electromagnetic field, and then people feel that. So if you feel very chaotic, chances are you're going to negatively influence somebody else's emotional state if they're not aware of that, and vice versa. Someone comes into the room and they're angry and you are like not paying attention, they're going to let their vibes are going to run off. Their vibes are going to influence you, and you might have a bad day for the rest of the day. That's just an example of how your electromagnetic field is influenced by co-regulation. In the packet, actually I didn't put it in there, but we showed it yesterday. It's, let's see if I can show it. Yes, I'm going to take you on an adventure. We always go on an adventure in these calls. Thanks for being here. So this is co-regulation. So if somebody comes into the room in the upper left and they're like having a bad day, and you're just over there on the right, you're just like chill, and you're like, oh, I know what's happening here. They don't have any sort of control of their nervous system, but I'm just going to stay really peaceful. They actually will adjust to your emotional state because you are in control of your emotions. It's pretty freaking cool. This is huge for relationships. This is huge for people who have kids. A lot of the clients that I've worked with, their kids' behavior positively changes as a result of them doing this inner work. That's like my biggest accomplishment is hearing, or my biggest, I absolutely love hearing that when people are like, oh, my kids, they've changed so much as the result of me doing this work, because you start to feel different from them, and then you start to regulate their nervous system without any extra effort from you. All right, now I want to show you, actually, is there any other questions? We didn't talk about day 4 yet, but is there any other questions about day 1 through 3? That's a lot of information. I could talk about this all day. I love it so much. Oh, now I'm taking photos of myself. I could talk about this all day because it's freaking amazing. And it's not something that I learned in traditional medicine. Like, I went to grad school, I learned the Western medicine approach, and I did not learn any of this material. This was off of my own exploration of why people get so sick in the hospital. They get so sick, and you were like, this is just a natural process of being a human? No, it's prolonged states of high stress, of anxiety, of depression, of loneliness, of disconnection that lead to the physical manifestation of disease. And I've spent a lot of time with people at the end of their life, literally, like the end of their life, just so sad that they had a poor relationship or they spent so much of their life unhappy. So I left the hospital system to catch people when they are in this dysregulated state, to help them achieve the awareness and the understanding that, first of all, you don't need anybody else outside of you to be able to be a healthy, happy, safe person. You have all the ability to do whatever the F you want in this life. You just have to have the education, and it's not necessarily fair that you never received it. But people that are teaching us didn't know better. But now that we know better, now we can do better. There's a quote, I didn't come up with that myself, but that's one of my favorite quotes. Once you know better, you can do better. Day 4, we talked about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs and how physiological needs are like air, food, water, procreation for the benefit of keeping humanity alive. So that's like the base of the pyramid. And then on top of that, that specific need, you have your safety needs. So feeling safe in your environment, having health, having property, having something over your head, but mostly having safety, having trust. And then on top of that is intimacy, sense of connection, family, friendship. If you don't feel safe at some level, it's very hard to actually connect with people. It might be a very superficial connection. You might feel isolated actually when you go home and you're like, oh, that was very draining. I actually don't like those people. I just kind of put on this show, because at some level you don't feel safe. So it's actually so hard to achieve deeper connection with friends, in relationships, with strangers. Like talking to anyone is really challenging when you don't have that sense of safety or that sense of trust within yourself. And when your nervous system is activated, you physiologically are not primed to seek connection. Safety trumps intimacy every single time, because you have to, if you were an animal and the animal was like, hey, what's more important, getting eaten by this lion or like having sex with this other lioness, right? You would be like, oh, of course they're going to prioritize safety over sex. And that's what happens in relationships. So I'm a huge proponent of mental emotional health in relationships, because it's not your partner's fault for the disconnection. So many times I hear all these like people blaming their partner, it's his fault, it's her fault. It's actually your unhealed trauma's fault because you're just projecting your own shit onto each other. and then they become the trigger for your sympathetic nervous system. So again, just giving you something else to think about. Not that you have to think that everything I'm saying is the truth, but if I can sprinkle one little seed in your mind that sparks curiosity to understand that there's something beyond blaming your partner and being stuck in states of anxiety, depression, just feeling unhappy, then I did my job and I can be happy. I am here to just provide knowledge that I have cultivated and synthesized in a way that I feel like makes sense for why there's just so much disconnection, so much difficulty in relationships. So day 5, we basically did our review. I just wanted to show you what else is in the workbook. If you're just joining and you are interested in having this workbook, it's free and you just download it. There's a link in my bio, but all of those things, all of the videos that you will receive, I hope that you watch them again. Is the trauma cycle? Yes. There's some pictures of the trauma cycle. But also you can totally email me or message me if you have any questions. There are intimacy positions, there's intimacy prompts, there's date night ideas in this packet, so it's 20 pages. I'm hoping that you will watch this video again, watch the past week's videos, show your spouse or tell them some talking points that you learned, and then you can try the practice exercises that are free, they're fun, and if anything, they're just gonna improve your sex life. So you have nothing to lose in trying these. I'm just gonna show you a little bit what they look like so that you will go download this book because it's really great. So there's intimacy pictures. These are just ways to actually stimulate very, very potent neurochemicals that you can utilize for healing, quantum healing, holistic healing. So I'm just going to let you see that. Advanced connection prompts. There's also connection prompts that are sprinkled throughout the workbook, but what is one thing you've always wanted to try? What fantasy excites you? What is your favorite place to be touched? These are more after you've watched the 5 days and you got a good idea of where maybe the disconnection is. This is like sexual expansion. So some connection prompts, date ideas. So if you're curious about that, and then an intimacy checklist, like what should you do in order to improve intimacy in your relationship. Just gives you some reminders of things to think about. I am having a group. It's for the holidays. It's like a support group for the holidays because the holidays can be very stressful. They can also be a time where conflict can come up with your spouse. So I'm having that. It'll probably be on Wednesdays. So if you're interested in understanding more about the stress response and hear some good tips about navigating conflict with family and friends during the holidays, that will be available. And I also am launching a course around Thanksgiving. And it's a monster of a course. And my intention there is to give everybody accessible resources that are having relationship issues or are having connection issues in general, an opportunity to be able to afford this course that goes into depth about the trauma response, about all of the things that are necessary in order to find deeper connection. And if you have any questions, you can always comment on any one of my posts or DM me or email me, however you want to get in contact with me. I also have a steamy text guide that's available. So if you like this workbook and you want more prompts on how to flirt with your partner, how to say cute things to them and really stoke that fire, that's available in the links too. Just trying to provide you with all the things in my brain so I can clear more room to learn more things to give back to you guys. So if you need anything, let me know. Thanks for being here. This was so fun. I hope to do more workshops in the future. But yeah, I'll see you soon.